I'm David Strevel, and this morning we have these charts here because there's a lot of numbers. I'd like to present a few that concern our budget. And first of all, I would like you all to know that the board and the officers of Kadampa Center actually have a plan every year, and we have a budget. We have a list of things we think are going to be expenses, and we have a plan for where the income or the donations is going to come from, and we try to manage all our bills so that we can keep our center running. And we're a nonprofit corporation, of course, a nonprofit charitable organization. So the first thing I'd like to present is just a summary of our proposed expenses, expected expenses for 2010. In 6 big categories. And the largest category, 45% of all our expected expenses, is hiring Geshe Gallick and Geshe Sangpo and Venerable Tendron and part-time office staff. And that is 45% of our entire budget. Now, I should say that pay levels are low. They start at about $4 an hour, and they go all the way up to about $8 an hour. So, except for our non-Sangha office staff, and that's a little higher than that, but not a lot. So at those pay levels, we have to also provide some housing and auto expense and so on, because nobody earning $4 an hour could actually drive anywhere in their own car and get to a meeting. So that's that. 28% of our proposed expenses this year were for the spiritual program. That mostly has to do with the Light of the Path retreat out at Black Mountain, where we rent the whole retreat center for 2 weeks and have a couple of hundred attendees. We spend about 11% of all our money on our mortgage. We own approximately 60% of this building and grounds on our own, and the bank has the rest. And we have to pay mortgage and interest. We spend about 9% on utilities. We are planning to spend about 6% on fundraising costs and about 3% on the spiritual program. And our overall budget is around $200,000 a year, $203,000 as shown here. So where was the income going to come from? Well, 44% was expected to come from the spiritual program, donations at the Light of the Path retreat and visiting Sangha, 37% in pledges and Sunday donations, about 9% in-kind gifts. That means housing given to Sangha and supplies bought and given. About 5% donations at all of our classes that are held on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays. About 3% sales of non-dharma items in the bookstore. And the plan was then we'd have $215,000 in income. So how are we doing this year? Well, 80% of the year is over, and the actual expenses we've had so far this year are $141,000, which is 69% of the budget. Now that means we're running below budget. Expenses are less than we had in the budget. Now the income is at $134,000. This is all donations, and that's 62% of the budget. So you can see that we're falling short a little bit. We have been working very hard this year to hold down expenses. And I can tell you, as treasurer, when I look at things a couple of times a month, we are really squeezing expenses down and relying a lot on volunteers and trying to make ends meet. But we do have a deficit of about $7,000 so far this year. Now that means that $7,000 more came out of our checking account than has gone in. And by year end, that's probably going to be about $15,000. And so far we've been able to tolerate that because we had a surplus on hand at the start of the year. Now one thing I want to mention, a big project we got done this year was our classroom project, where we bought a modular classroom from the Statesville School District and moved it here and established it out in our rock yard and got it all installed and ready and used for classes. And the total expenses there came to $40,000. We had $20,000 in our children's fund and special giving for that. And that left about $20,000 more in expenses that we paid for with cash on hand. So the good news is the entire project is paid for, but we did reduce the funds on hand in our checking account by $20,000 while we did it. So our current status is all of our bills are paid and up to date. We're in good shape. The classroom project is paid for, and in our various accounts we have $24,000 in cash on hand, and that might sound like a lot, but that's really like 1.5 months worth of expenses. So as treasurer, I say that's as low as it ought to go. Once you get very far below that, our bookkeeper is going to have to start storing the bills in the cabinet until enough donations come in to pay them. So we don't want to get things squeezed down too far there. So in summary, we've had many accomplishments this year. We carried on the Light of the Path retreat. We've increased our teachings here until there's an event going on almost every day of the week. We installed a classroom, but we must rely on pledges and individual donations more in 2011 as we look forward to creating our budget for next year. We can see that there's probably going to be less of a surplus from our retreat at Black Mountain and our spiritual program, and we're going to have to rely more on pledges. So the final message is for 2011, we need an increase in pledges over the 2010 experience. And that summarizes the treasurer's report. I'll be outside after the meeting and would be happy to answer any questions then.